In order to maximize your experience when you're watching the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, there's a couple things you need to know, so let me tell you them. Okay, first things first, the series releases on May 27th, and we actually get 2 episodes released on one day. After that, there will be 1 episode every week, totaling up to 6 episodes. They will of course be released on Disney+, so be sure to watch them as soon as you can in order so you avoid as many spoilers as possible. The series is set 9 BBY, and BBY stands for Before the Battle of Yavin, which occurs in A New Hope, so it's 9 years before A New Hope. New Hope is pretty much set like a week after the start of Rogue One, so it's also 9 years before Rogue One. This puts it 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, The Bad Batch, The Clone Wars Season 7, between like 4 and 5 years before Star Wars Rebels Season 1 starts, 1 to 4 years after the events of Solo: A Star Wars Story, 5 years after Jedi Fallen Order. And with all of that considered, it means characters like Cal Kestis and everyone else from Jedi Fallen Order, as well as people like Han and Chewie, could potentially show up in the series, although very unlikely, and people like Tobias Beckett and Aura Singh are impossible because they've already died, and the Ghost crew from Star Wars Rebels are extremely unlikely. Speaking of characters, who is actually confirmed and how old will they be in 9BBY? Of course, we know that Obi-Wan and Vader will show up. We've obviously known Obi-Wan since the series was announced, and we've known Vader for a very, very long time. But stick around to hear about their potential rematches. Obi-Wan will be 48 in 9BBY, and Darth Vader will be 33. I've also got something to say about Darth Vader at this specific age coming up very shortly. Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, and Luke Skywalker are of course going to appear. Owen is going to be 43, Beru is going to be 38, and Luke is going to be 10 because of course he was born in Revenge of the Sith, so 10 years after, he's 10 years old. And as for the 3 Inquisitors, the Grand Inquisitor is 38. The 5th brother has no confirmed birth date, but I'm going to guess that he's a few years younger than the Grand, so 35. And then the new 3rd sister, Reva, also doesn't have a confirmed birth date. I'm going to again guess that she's younger than those two and say that she's 27. Now, what has actually happened in the 10-year gap between the last time chronologically we saw Obi-Wan Kenobi? Well, as he's hiding on Tatooine, he's obviously learnt to not use his lightsaber or the Force when he normally would, but sometimes he had to. And one of those times is when Jabba the Hutt's weak way thugs were going to collect their water tax as they normally would. This time, the civilians and the Tatooine market didn't really have any water to give away. But of course, the weak ways wouldn't take no for an answer, so Obi-Wan had to cause their blasters to misfire, and he obviously did this through the Force. Those same weak ways later showed up to the Lars homestead, and Obi-Wan had to send them away with a mind trick, and that eventually led to Black Chrysanthemum being sent, Obi-Wan fighting Black Chrysanthemum, and he had to use both the Force and his lightsaber in order to actually survive that encounter and to save Uncle Owen and Luke Skywalker. Fun fact, that fight is actually what gave Black Chrysanthemum the scar on his eye. Secondly, Obi-Wan stayed in shape and practiced ways to fight without his lightsaber in the Force by fighting Tusken Raiders. From the trailer, it kind of seems like he actually got a job to keep himself busy in this time, which to be fair, makes a lot of sense. He also wrote a journal that Luke would later discover and read from after Obi-Wan's demise in A New Hope. And I think it's quite likely Obi-Wan talking in the trailer is actually just the words he's writing down in his journal.
The fight is done. We lost. Stay hidden.
But the coolest thing that Obi-Wan does in these 10 years is he learns to cook stews and soups. Pretty cool. Now, there's a couple things that I noticed when watching both these trailers that you should pay attention to when you're watching the actual series. And the first of those being unnamed characters that actually got a bit of screen time. The first of those being this Imperial officer. Second being this Stormtrooper wearing like white and slightly blue armor, which many think could be Captain Rex. The third is a new Inquisitor, and the fourth just being some like big droid that we see. So look out for those, because they could have bigger roles than we actually realise. And in the trailer we see many different planets, the first of those being of course Tatooine, but the second being a new planet called Daiyu. It's been described as like a Hong Kong style planet, and it seems like it has 2 areas to it, like a not so nice area where there's like markets and stuff, and we see Obi-Wan actually hiding there in his cloak, and then a definitely more wealthy looking side that's like in the main city, it seems. The third being an unidentified kind of desert planet, but it actually has like some shrubbery and plants, so I definitely don't think it's Tatooine. It kind of reminds me of either like Lothal from Star Wars Rebels or Tython from The Mandalorian Season 2, but I really don't think it's either of those, so it could be a new planet. And the fourth being the water moon of Ner, which is actually where the Fortress Inquisitorius is. And the most important thing that you need to know in order to maximize your experience when watching the Kenobi series is the best YouTube channel to subscribe to for some, hopefully, great videos about the Kenobi series. And that channel is called Master2187, so I think you should subscribe. Now, everything we've seen about the Kenobi series, like, looks really, really good, and obviously we've been excited for this ever since it got announced. But will we get a season 2? Well, it's not off the table. Ewan McGregor, for starters, has said that he'd be more than happy to return for a season 2, but the more important person in terms of actually getting a season 2 to happen is Kathleen Kennedy, and she said that it's definitely not impossible. I assume they're just going to wait to see how the series goes down with the fans, to see if the fans actually want a season 2, and then they'll have a more serious conversation about it. So if you enjoy the Kenobi series, make sure you let people know about it. Now, the next category of things that you need to know, I've just titled as Darth Vader stuff. The first of those being that an Obi-Wan versus Vader fight has been confirmed, and it's highly rumoured that we will get not one, but two. Now, many people think that the fights will be like dreams, visions, projections, etc, and maybe one of those potential two would be, but I definitely think that one will be a real fight. Now, secondly and thirdly, the things that you've been waiting for. Darth Vader has been described as an angrier version of himself in Rogue One, which of course, he was pretty angry in Rogue One, and Hayden Christensen has said that Darth Vader is in his prime in this series. It was previously believed that Star Wars Rebels was Vader's prime, but given that Hayden has already watched Star Wars Rebels in the build-up to this series, I believe that what he said could actually be true. And that's definitely making me lean a bit towards Darth Vader being the winner of that fight against Obi-Wan. We've talked about the confirmed characters, but there's obviously a lot of other ones that could appear in this series. This is the Kenobi series, it's not Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, so out of the ones that I'm going to list off, maybe expect 2 to 3 at most. So for starters, Cad Bane. Some people think we've actually already seen him, and of course there is a bounty on Obi-Wan, which also opens the door people like Black Chrysanthemum and like all of the other bounty hunters basically, but Black Chrysanthemum in particular because he has history of Obi-Wan, and they just recently introduced him in the Book of Boba Fett. There's also the chance for Commander Cody as an Imperial, or Captain Rex as an ally to Obi-Wan, and I mentioned him earlier. That would help explain how he got to where he was in the Bad Batch to where he was in Star Wars Rebels. There's a small chance that Jabba the Hutt himself appears. Qui-Gon as a Force Ghost, and Yoda Force projecting himself like we see in Star Wars Rebels is also a possibility because Obi-Wan needs to learn how to become a Force Ghost. And someone that I really want to see is Hondo Ohnaka. Now, Reva said when she set the bounty on Obi-Wan, every low-life and bounty hunter, and I think Hondo fits into the category of a low-life, so he will find out about the bounty on Obi-Wan, therefore could show up. There's also a very high chance we get a lot of flashbacks, therefore that opens the door to people like Satine, Qui-Gon not as a Force Ghost, Darth Maul, Ahsoka, and basically anyone from the Clone Wars and back. It's all well and good like speculating and theorizing about which characters are going to show up, but it's all a bit pointless unless you think about what you actually think is going to happen in the series. Therefore, you can use that to decide who the most likely characters to appear actually are. So in this video, I go over the most popular theories for events that are actually going to happen in the series and score them out of 10 for how likely I think they actually are. So go and check that out and then decide who you think is going to show up in the series. Thank you for watching. Please do leave a like if you did enjoy, subscribe for more, and goodbye.